Welcome to my basic character guide where I cover the general use of a character and skills you may prioritize over others. Today we'll be covering Auron. Generally he's supposed to be a really hard hitting unit, somebody who can take a hit or two, but I feel like with the evolution of the game, there's certain things that he lacks that kind of keep him out of the meta or maybe not your first choice as far as like maybe on an ice team, especially when it comes to PvP. But without further delay, let's look at his skills. His main job, Legendary Guardian, is actually pretty decent. It offers generally everything you would want, but it definitely has a lot of things you may want to turn off. And Heaven's Fall is definitely not one of them. This is your barrier breaker, dealing a decent amount of damage, and it raises his own slash attack. This is something you would definitely want to prioritize him doing, and it's probably going to be his longest range ability. Even if there aren't any barriers that need to be broken, raising slash attack can be really crucial for getting that kill with the next hit. And it's definitely way more reliable than trying to paralyze or do something that's status inflicting, because he's not really going to have high faith unless you build him that way. Banishing Blade, another skill you would definitely not turn off. A 2-hitter that's a guaranteed hit. It's literally just a little bit worse than Cloud's attack, but regardless, having a guaranteed hit is definitely something crucial, especially in the meta nowadays. You can deal with evasion this way, and you won't have to feel so pressured for building him for accuracy. Another skill you may want to prioritize is Dragon Fang. This is going to be his main AoE. It's going to have a possibility of inflicting immobilization, but you're mainly keeping it just because it's an AoE and it's dealing a decent amount of damage, so you're better off using this. Now, looking at the skills that you may want to turn off, Crouching Dragon is one of them. And when you look at the comparison to Heaven's Fall, you can definitely see why you wouldn't want this skill on. He will prioritize this over Heaven's Fall just because it's dealing more damage. But at the same time, you really have to consider, do you want that chance of paralysis, or would you rather have a guaranteed slash attack increase? So for me personally, Heaven's Fall is just the better skill. Shooting Star is another skill that I just really don't like. The range on it's pretty decent, but this is something that can also kind of get him in trouble. If you're trying to use a TMR or something like that, he may prioritize or have the range to hit somebody with this. It's going to deal small damage, and now he's out of rotation or he's out of positioning that you would prefer. So in my opinion, this is just something that's a no-brainer. You just turn it off. As for Entrust the Future, definitely something you would not turn off. This is really powerful, raising his accuracy, his crit rate, his defense pin. It's so beautiful, really good. Just, I can't say enough about it. Just leave it on, man. Looking at his main sub job, Majestic Phoenix is actually pretty decent. Lowering attack and magic can be disabling a little bit, but if you feel like you can use this to maybe keep a teammate alive or a tank or something like that, by all means. A Glass to the Deceased is something that can be used to keep him back, maybe go toward his teammates, buff them with this regen. I'm not 100% sure if it's going to get that healing power up buff, but it does offer nullification to poison. And like I said before, it's just something you really use to keep him back. As far as his sub job Soldier, there are things in here that are pretty enticing, but really when it comes down to it, I would only really stick to Hazard Spin and Hazard Break. Hazard Spin is one of those situational attacks. It can be really good when you need it. Something else to consider, Hazard Break, consuming your own HP to deal a large amount of damage. The AoE is really good. This could be something that can definitely set somebody up to get a kill, but I mainly like it for the range. It keeps him back because he's definitely somebody you don't want to be in the mix of a fight. And for me, my personal favorite is definitely Pugilist. Breathing Technique comes in handy whenever you need it, and it can help keep him alive in hectic situations. Spirit Breaker is a really good skill. It deals a decent amount of attack while also lowering the attack of the enemy, and the damage can be stacked upon the number of hits that you receive, up to 5. This skill can be really good depending on who you're going up against. You probably would want to have a lot of AoE resist, maybe some unit attack resist. Pretty much the tankier he is, the more effective this skill is going to be. Pugilistic Mastery is something really good for keeping him back. You just really have to keep in mind where he's at on the map and that he has access to his teammates. Shifting Strike, I don't really find this really all that useful. When it comes to skills that move my unit toward the enemy a lot faster, I really prefer for them to rerunning with a tank. That way they don't get bombarded, and it separates them enough to where they're not in range of AoEs and stuff like that. So it's almost like a flanking maneuver, but it really depends on your setup. And finally, Iron Body Stance, another skill I generally just don't turn off. And from my experience, he does not prioritize this over bells or anything like that. So it's a safe skill to have on, and it's always really good to just have them buffing if they're not attacking. As far as his support goes, I really do prefer to use Warrior Spirit, raising his HP and his attack, really kind of boosting everything that he already has access to buff. The Guide of the Story is also pretty decent, raising his agility and the chance that he will counter. Outside of those two, the only ones I can really recommend are Self-Sacrifice. The attack raise is definitely better than Warrior Spirit here, but you are lowering your attack resistance to everything, so you do have to be kind of cautious of that. The only counter I will be talking about is Counter. The chance to counter attack whenever he takes damage, and it lowers defense for 3 turns. This can be crucial, can be really powerful, especially since he doesn't really have a means of lowering defense. And I feel like if you're running a guide to a store, you may want to prioritize getting his reaction block rate up. As for his Limit Break, it does give him a lot of things I really do like. and they did give him like a buff to it. It gives him a barrier for 3 turns. That's just reducing damage outright, raising his defense pin before actually dealing the damage. Really good. But it deals non-elemental damage. It is an AoE. I don't like the non-elemental damage. It can't really stack with anything except for slashing, so it could also break a chain as well. And finally, as for his master ability, max HP, ice attack, spirit, so you may want to prioritize making his glasses a spirit build, going after magic based enemies, and aside from that, just pretty much everything about his limit break. Auron on his own is actually a really good unit. He's somebody I was going for pretty hard whenever I first started playing the game. And personally for me, he is one of my favorite characters, definitely a top 5 Final Fantasy character. But when it comes to the game, he lacks a lot of survivability as far as PvP goes. He doesn't have access to courage, any forms of reflex or dodging. They do give you some spirit to kind of play with, so that may be something you may want to consider. Maybe taking him toward an anti-magic build or something like that, where he's going after these mages and he can actually take these hits. Maybe that's where Spirit Breaker kind of comes in handy. And when it comes to his AP restoration, I feel like Bells is just perfect for him. He needs a lot of AP. He has a lot of AP eating attacks. As a whole, I really don't feel like he's somebody who can carry your team. He can deal a lot of damage. He's excellent for maybe a backup, maybe a support or something like that. You just really have to keep him out of the mix of a fight. I would run a tank on the opposite side of him, pretty much try to keep him out of range of attacks, and try to get the enemy team as bunched together as possible. Give him time to get his buffs off, and by the time he's ready to engage, he'll have a lot of defense pin, he'll have his accuracy buff off, AP ready to go, but he's definitely going to need some strong teammates. If you have access to Exorcist, it's definitely a really strong card for him, giving him access to more defense pin, a triple hit attack, slash pin, and that can definitely be beneficial in raids. And all in all, I'd say a really good in the middle of the road kind of character pretty much. But that'll be it for this video. I really hope you guys enjoyed it. Like, share, subscribe, the whole thing, and I'll see you in the next one. Take it easy.